My boyfriend spent 3 years pushing me to keep my hair short. Sometimes life throws you a curveball so wild, so utterly out of left field, it makes you question every single thing you thought was real. Can you believe someone could spend years manipulating your appearance, subtly eroding your sense of self, only for you to discover it was all part of a twisted, horrifying game they were playing with another woman? My boyfriend spent 3 years making me cut my hair shorter and shorter, convincing me it was for my own good. But the day I finally let it grow out, his entire double life came crashing down. And when I found out, it was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. When I first met Arlo, my hair was like a waterfall, all the way down to the middle of my back. It was thick, it was healthy, and I had been growing it out since high school. It was my hair. I loved it. I spent time caring for it, styling it, and honestly, it made me feel so confident. Arlo, when we first started dating, he seemed to love it too. He'd say it was one of the first things he noticed about me. He'd look at me with those intense eyes and tell me I looked like a painting. I ate it up, I thought I'd found someone who truly appreciated me. We dated for about 6 months, a perfect honeymoon phase, before the first comment dropped. It was subtle, almost a whisper. He said short hair might suit my face better. He'd seen a picture of some celebrity with a pixie cut and just knew I'd look amazing with that style. I just laughed it off, said I wasn't interested in cutting my hair short. He dropped it for a month. Then he brought it up again. Long hair is a lot of maintenance, babe, he'd say. Short hair would be so much easier for you. I told him I didn't mind the maintenance, but a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. A few weeks later, over dinner, he went a step further. I think you're hiding behind your hair, he accused, his voice gentle but firm. You'd look so much more sophisticated with a shorter cut. Women with short hair just seem more confident, more put together. He kept making these comments, every few weeks, chipping away at me. And slowly, agonizingly, I started to wonder, was he right? Was I hiding? Would I look better? Should I try something new? The confidence my long hair gave me started to feel like vanity, like a flaw he was trying to help me fix. So I cut it to my shoulders. Arlo said it looked nice, but next time you could go even shorter. A few months later, it was chin length. Good, he'd say, but you could definitely go shorter still. By the end of our first year together, my hair was a pixie cut, barely covering my ears. And Arlo, he loved it. He said I looked incredible, that this was the real me, and he was so glad I finally found a style that suited me. I remember feeling a strange mix of accomplishment and emptiness. I had done what he wanted, and he was happy. Was I? For the next 3 years, I kept that hair short. Every time it started to grow past my ears, Arlo would casually mention I was due for a trim. Every time I even thought about letting it grow out, he'd remind me how much better I looked with short hair. Long hair washes you out, he'd claim. It makes you look younger in a bad way. He hammered home that the pixie cut made me look like a professional woman who had her life together. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my boyfriend. I thought he wanted what was best for me. I trusted him implicitly. I'd lost touch with my own preference, convinced his opinion was superior. Then, last spring, my hair stylist moved away. Finding a new one was a nightmare. The good ones were booked for weeks. So I waited. My hair started growing, past my ears, then to my chin, then blessedly to my shoulders. Arlo, of course, kept asking when I was going to get cut. I'd tell him I had an appointment coming up, but the truth was a quiet revolution was happening inside me. I was starting to like it again. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I felt like me. That old, confident me who loved her long hair. So I canceled the appointment. I just decided to keep growing out. I didn't tell Arlo. I just let it happen. He noticed, obviously. The comments started again. You're looking shaggy, babe. Need a trim. Then, you're letting yourself go. And the kicker, I miss the polished version of you. My blood ran cold. Polished version? Was that all I was to him? I finally told him, I want to try something different. He went quiet. Then, cold as ice, he said he really preferred me with short hair. I pushed back. Why does it matter so much to you? He shrugged. I just have a preference. You should respect that. My jaw dropped. And I have a preference too. I shot back. And my preference is my own hair. He got angry, truly angry. He called me difficult. Things were tense, thick with unspoken resentment for months. But I kept growing my hair. By fall, it was past my shoulders again, and I felt beautiful. Truly beautiful, not just polished. That December, Arlo's company holiday party was coming up. Usually, he dismissed them as boring, not worth my time. But this year, I insisted. I wanted to meet his co-workers, the people he talked about. He agreed, but he seemed nervous. When we arrived, he kept his hand on my back, a bit too tightly, like he was steering me through the crowd. He introduced me quickly to a few people, then tried to pull us into a quiet corner. But fate, or perhaps just a very confused coworker, had other plans. A woman from his department, someone he'd mentioned before, came over. She looked at me, utterly bewildered. I don't think I've met you before, she said. I'm Arlo's girlfriend, I replied, a small smile on my face. Her confusion deepened. Oh, I thought Arlo's girlfriend had short, dark hair. My smile faltered. I used to have short hair, I explained, but I grew it out. She shook her head. No, I thought his girlfriend was a different person entirely. She then described a woman, shorter than me, with a pixie cut and dark hair, who had come to events before. She said that woman introduced herself as Arlo's girlfriend at the summer picnic just 6 months ago. My world tilted. I looked at Arlo. His face was completely pale. Wait, the blood had drained from it. My God. I grabbed his arm hard and pulled him toward the hallway, away from the music, the chatter, all those eyes watching us. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear my own voice. Arlo, still ashen, mumbled about a mix-up, his co-worker being confused. But his hands wouldn't stop shaking. I could feel his arm trembling under my grip as we pushed through the door into the empty corridor. The party sound suddenly muffled behind us. And there we were, just the two of us, under those harsh fluorescent lights. Who is this woman? I demanded, my voice raw. The one with the short dark hair? The one who's been coming to your work events as your girlfriend. Arlo stammered, tugging at his collar like he couldn't get enough air. He insisted she was just a friend from his department, someone who might have gotten the wrong idea about their relationship. His eyes darted around, looking at the walls, the floor, anywhere but at me. What's her name? I pressed, my voice dangerously calm. He hesitated. Jasmine. He swore they weren't together, never had been. But his voice sounded so wrong, so hollow, and his whole body had gone stiff. We're leaving, I said. Right now. He nodded quickly, almost too quickly, like he was relieved to escape. As we walked back through the party to get our coats, I could feel people staring. Arlo kept his hand on my back, but it felt different now, like he was trying to steer me, to control me, not support me. The drive home was silent, thick with dread, except for my questions that he kept expertly deflecting. When did you last see Jasmine? I don't remember exactly. How long have you known her? A few years, maybe. Why would she tell people she's your girlfriend? It's complicated. I'll explain everything when we get home. I just need time to think about how to say it. His voice sounded hollow, like he was reading from a script he hadn't memorized yet. Every answer felt rehearsed, empty. We pulled into our apartment building, rode the elevator up in agonizing silence. My hands were shaking now, too. I couldn't tell if I was angry or scared or both. Inside our apartment, Arlo finally stopped deflecting. He admitted there was another woman, Jasmine, from his department. But he insisted, again, it wasn't what I thought. It's complicated, he repeated like a mantra. He claimed they'd gone on a few dates before he met me, and she'd gotten the wrong idea. He swore he'd tried to let her down easy, but she just wouldn't accept it. My legs felt weak. I sank onto the couch. Then why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Would she introduce herself as your girlfriend at a work event 6 months ago, if you only went on a few dates years ago? Arlo buried his head in his hands. Jasmine is unstable, he muttered. She's been kinda stalking me at work. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you with my crazy coworker situation. I've been trying to handle it professionally through work channels, but she keeps showing up at company events uninvited. Something about his explanation felt completely, utterly wrong. The way he was sitting, hunched over, avoiding my gaze. The way his story kept changing with every question. My gut screamed. I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, and typed in Jasmine. Arlo's head snapped up. Stop, he commanded. You're invading someone's privacy. I ignored him, my fingers flying. I added his company name to narrow the results. He stood, tried to grab my phone, but I pushed past him, walked into our bedroom, and locked the door behind me. I could hear him calling my name through the door, but I kept scrolling. Jasmine Westbrook. Her profile picture, a woman with short, dark hair, styled in a pixie cut. My stomach dropped like a stone. I clicked on her page, scrolling frantically. Photos of her and Arlo at restaurants I recognized. Photos of them at parks on sunny days. Photos of them at what looked like company events with other people I'd seen tonight. The dates on the posts went back 2 years. 2 entire years of pictures. And in every single photo, Jasmine had short, dark hair, cut almost exactly like mine used to be. The same pixie style Arlo had spent 3 years convincing me to keep. I unlocked the bedroom door, my hand shaking, and walked back to the living room where Arlo was pacing. I held up my phone, showing him the photos. I watched his face as his whole story, his meticulously constructed lie, crumbled in real time. He tried to say something, but no words came out. He just sank onto the edge of the couch, burying his face in his hands again. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he admitted it. He'd been seeing both of us. It just happened, he whimpered. I never meant for it to go on this long. He swore he loved me more, that I was the one he truly wanted to be with. I stood there, looking at him, and I didn't recognize the person sitting in front of me. He was a stranger, a monster. I grabbed my purse, my keys. I'm leaving, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Where are you going? He cried. I don't know, I said, my voice breaking, but I can't be here right now. I drove to my friend Rosemary's apartment, texting her from the parking lot. She opened her door in pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. She made tea while I sat on her couch, trying to explain. The words came out in broken pieces, punctuated by sobs. Rosemary just listened, never interrupting, just handing me tissues, letting me talk until I ran out of things to say. She set up her guest room. Stay as long as you need, she said. I lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling, trying to comprehend how my entire relationship, my entire life could have been a lie. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't imagine sitting at my desk, pretending everything was normal. Rosemary made coffee, and we sat at her kitchen table. I started making a list on my phone. Everything that didn't make sense about the past 3 years. All the times Arlo pressured me about my hair. All the work events, he said, weren't worth my time. All the weekends he claimed to be working late or traveling for business. Every single excuse he made about why I couldn't come to certain places or meet certain people. The list grew longer and longer as I remembered more and more details, each one a fresh stab to the heart. Rosemary sat beside me, opened her laptop, and pulled up Jasmine's Instagram again. This time, we scrolled slowly, deliberately. She stopped on a picture from last June. Jasmine and Arlo at what looked like a street festival. My stomach clenched. I remembered that weekend, clearly. Arlo had told me he was at a work conference in Chicago. He'd even sent me texts about boring presentations and hotel food. But in this photo, he was standing next to Jasmine, his arm around her waist, both of them holding ice cream cones, smiling. The location tag? A festival downtown in our city. Rosemary clicked to the next photo. This one was from August at a beach. Arlo had claimed he was at another conference, this time in Boston. But the photo showed him and Jasmine building a sandcastle together at a beach I recognized, just 2 hours from where we lived. Rosemary kept scrolling. We found more. A hiking photo from September when he said he was visiting his sick aunt. A restaurant dinner from October when he claimed to be working late on a big project. Every single photo matched up with a weekend or evening when he had given me an excuse about why he couldn't see me. I felt physically sick looking at the timeline. He didn't just lie occasionally. He planned everything, carefully, meticulously, to keep us apart. I pulled out my phone and opened my text with Caitlin, Arlo's co-worker from last night. I typed out a message. Can we meet for coffee? I need to talk about what happened at the party. My finger hovered over the send button for a minute, my heart pounding, before I finally pressed it. Caitlin responded almost immediately, saying she'd been worried about me, and asked if we could meet that afternoon at a coffee shop near Arlo's office. I agreed. Rosemary offered to come with me, but I knew, deep down, I needed to do this alone. She made me promise to text her if I needed anything. I arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, ordered a tea I didn't drink, and sat there, my heart thrumming a frantic rhythm. Caitlin walked in exactly on time, spotted me, and gave me a tight hug before sitting down. She looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her coffee cup. She started talking before I could even ask my first question. Everyone at work is talking about what happened at the party, she began, her voice low. I feel terrible. I should have said something sooner. Then she dropped the bombshell. For the past 2 years, everyone in their department thought Jasmine was Arlo's girlfriend. He brought her to every single company event, the summer picnics, the holiday parties, team dinners, all of it. Caitlin said whenever someone asked about me, Arlo always had an excuse ready. I was busy with work projects, or I didn't enjoy corporate events, or I had other commitments. He made it sound completely normal that I never came to anything. Nobody questioned it because lots of people don't bring their partners to work stuff. But Jasmine, she came to everything. She acted like she belonged there. She knew everyone's names, asked about their families, fit right into the group. Caitlin kept talking, and I just sat there, numb, taking it all in. She'd been thinking back, she said, remembering things that seemed weird now, like how Arlo always wanted to know the seating arrangements before events. He'd ask who was sitting where, sometimes even request to be moved to different tables. Caitlin had thought he was just particular about who he worked with. But now, she realized he was managing who Jasmine and I might run into if we both showed up. Then, she mentioned his desk at work. It had photos on it. Photos of him and Jasmine at various places. Caitlin had walked past his desk hundreds of times and never once saw a photo of me. She hadn't thought anything of it before. Not everyone displays photos at work. But combined with everything else, it was another damning piece of the pattern. I went back to Rosemary's apartment, my head spinning, and spent the rest of the afternoon on my laptop. I created a fake social media account. Random name, stock photo. Then I used it to look at Jasmine's profile more carefully. Her account was public. I could see everything. And what I found made me feel even worse. She posted about their relationship openly. A couple of photos with captions about date nights and weekend adventures. She tagged him in posts, used hashtags like hashtag couple goals and hashtag relationship. She shared photos of gifts he'd given her, writing about how lucky she was. Meanwhile, Arlo had always asked me to keep our relationship more private online. He'd said he didn't like mixing his personal and professional lives on social media. He'd said it was more mature to keep things between us, instead of broadcasting everything. I believed him. It seemed reasonable. But now I saw it for what it was. He just didn't want me posting anything Jasmine might see. I kept scrolling through Jasmine's posts and found ones about her hair. A post from about 3 years ago, showing her with long hair past her shoulders. The caption said she was thinking about cutting it short. Then, a few weeks later, there was a photo of her with a pixie cut, almost identical to the one I used to have. The caption talked about how supportive Arlo had been about her new look. She wrote that he loved her professional style and thought short hair made her look confident. There were comments from her friends saying the cut looked great, asking if her boyfriend helped her decide. She responded, "Yes, he encouraged me to try something bold." I read those words and my stomach turned. They were almost exactly the same things Arlo had said to me. The same compliments about looking professional and confident. The same pressure disguised as support. He used the exact same script on both of us. Rosemary came into the guest room and found me staring at my laptop screen. She sat down on the bed next to me. "What did you find?" she asked gently. I showed her Jasmine's posts about the haircut, the comments about Arlo being supportive. Rosemary read them, shook her head slowly. She was quiet for a minute. "You should reach out to Jasmine directly," she said. "She deserves to know the truth about what Arlo has been doing." I told her I was scared. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I was lying, trying to cause problems? Rosemary nodded. "Those are valid fears. But Jasmine has a right to know she's been lied to, just like you have. If someone was doing this to me, I would want to know even if it hurt." I spent the next 2 days trying to figure out what to say to Jasmine. I drafted messages, deleted them, typed out explanations, erased them. I even practiced what I wanted to say out loud to Rosemary, but it never sounded right. Every version felt either too aggressive or too apologetic. I didn't want to attack Jasmine. She was a victim in this too. But I also didn't want to sound like I was making excuses for not figuring this out sooner. On the 3rd day, I finally wrote something simple. "Hi Jasmine, my name is my name. I'm Arlo's girlfriend, and I need to talk to you about something important. I ask if we can meet in person because this isn't a conversation I want to have over text." I read it 5 more times before hitting send. Jasmine responded in less than an hour. Her message was short, confused. "I don't understand who you are," she wrote, "because I'm Arlo's girlfriend. Are you confused? Is this some kind of joke?" I read her response and realized, with a sickening lurch, that she had no idea. Arlo had kept us so perfectly separate that she genuinely didn't know I existed. I wrote back, "I'm not confused and this isn't a joke. I've been dating Arlo for over 3 years and I have proof. I suggest we meet at a coffee shop to talk face to face." She agreed, but added, "I'm bringing evidence too, because I know I'm his girlfriend, and I can prove it." We picked a coffee shop, neutral territory. I spent the morning printing out screenshots of text messages between me and Arlo. Photos of us together from the past 3 years. I even printed a copy of our lease agreement, showing both our names on the apartment. My hands shook as I put everything in a folder. Rosemary asked again if she should come with me. "No," I said, "this is something I need to do alone." I arrived 15 minutes early, picked a table in the back corner, ordered coffee, and waited, my heart hammering in my chest. Then Jasmine walked in. I recognized her immediately from all the photos. She was shorter than me, with dark hair cut into that signature pixie. She scanned the coffee shop, spotted me, and walked over slowly, carrying her own folder of papers. We sat down across from each other. Neither of us spoke for a long, tense moment. Then, simultaneously, we both started pulling out our evidence. I spread out my printed photos and texts on the table. She did the same with hers. We stared at the papers covering the table between us. There were photos of Jasmine and Arlo at a restaurant I recognized. I pulled out a photo of me and Arlo at that very same restaurant on a different night. The tables and decorations were identical. She had a picture of them at a park. I had one of us at the exact same park. She had texts where he called her beautiful and said, "I love you." I had almost identical texts with slightly different wording. She had a birthday card he'd given her. I had one too, from my birthday last month. We sat in stunned silence, looking at the horrifying evidence of our duplicate relationships, laid out for the world to see. Jasmine picked up one of my photos, showing me and Arlo at a waterfront restaurant. She set it next to her own photo from the same place. The angle of the shot was almost identical. She traced her finger along the railing visible in both pictures. "When were you there?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I checked the date stamp on my phone. August 15th of last year. She pulled up her photo and showed me the date. August 22nd. 1 week apart. We both went to the same restaurant within 7 days, and neither of us knew the other existed. She scrolled through more of her photos, stopping on one from a hiking trail. I had the same trail in my camera roll from a different weekend. She showed me a picture from a coffee shop downtown. I recognized the blue tile wall in the background because I had a selfie in front of it. We kept finding these duplicate locations, like we were living parallel lives in the same city. Jasmine set her phone down and looked at me. "Do you remember Arlo ever mentioning his preference for short hair before you started dating?" I thought back to our early conversations. He complimented my long hair constantly those first few months. He never said anything about preferring it short until half a year into our relationship. Jasmine nodded slowly. Arlo told me on our second date that he found short hair attractive on women. He mentioned a former girlfriend who had a pixie cut and how much he loved that style. She said she had hair past her shoulders when they met. Within 3 months of dating him, she cut it to chin length. 6 months later, she went shorter. By their first anniversary, she had the pixie cut she had now. "I thought it was my own decision," she whispered. "I thought I was trying something new and bold." Now she knew. He used the same manipulation tactics on both of us. He made us both feel like cutting our hair was our choice, while he slowly pushed us toward the exact same look. I felt sick, thinking about how calculated it all was. Jasmine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "How long have you and Arlo been together?" she asked. 3 years and 2 months, I told her. She went very still. "Arlo and I," she said, her voice trembling, "have been dating for 3.5 years. I did the math in my head. That meant he started seeing her 6 months before he even met me. He was already in a relationship when he approached me at that bookstore and told me I looked like a painting. I thought I was his only girlfriend this whole time," Jasmine said, her voice breaking. "We talked about moving in together next year. I was looking at engagement rings online last month, thinking he might propose soon. I trusted him completely. I built my entire future around him. I moved into his apartment 2 years ago," I said, the words falling flat. Her face went white. "He told me he lived with a male roommate," she whispered, named Jar. "That's why I could never stay over. He claimed Jar was uncomfortable with overnight guests." My breath hitched. I was Jar. Arlo created a fake roommate to explain why Jasmine couldn't be at the apartment on weekends. Jasmine started piecing his system together out loud. He always claimed to work late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those must have been nights he spent with me. I realized he told me he had early morning client meetings on Wednesdays and Fridays. Those were probably mornings he went to work from Jasmine's place. He used his job as the excuse for everything. He told both of us he traveled for work conferences when he was probably just staying with the other one. He kept us on completely opposite schedules, so we would never overlap. Jasmine pulled out her phone, opened Arlo's social media profiles. She scrolled through his photos. Most of them were solo shots or pictures with his male friends. There were a few with Jasmine, but her face was angled away or partially cropped out. I looked through my own photos of Arlo. Same pattern. Lots of him alone, or with guys from work. A handful with me, but always carefully framed. He never posted couple photos that clearly showed our faces together. He managed his online presence to hide both relationships. Jasmine said his friend group from work never mixed with his college friends. He kept those social circles completely separate. She met his work friends, but never anyone from his past. I met his college buddies, but never his coworkers until last night. He built walls between every part of his life so nothing would connect. Jasmine's hand started shaking. I moved to this city 2 years ago, specifically to be closer to Arlo, she said, her voice raw. I had a job offer in another state that paid $15,000 more per year. Better position, better company, better career trajectory. But Arlo said he couldn't do long distance. He said our relationship was too important to him. He said he needed her nearby. So, she turned down the opportunity, took a lower-paying job here instead. She gave up significant career advancement because he convinced her he couldn't live without her close by. Meanwhile, he was living with me the entire time. I felt my chest tighten, remembering my own sacrifice. Last year, my company offered me a promotion to senior manager. Better pay, more responsibility. But it required attending evening networking events twice a month. When I told Arlo about it, he got quiet. Those evening events will cut into our time together, he'd said. Our relationship needs consistent quality time to stay strong. He worried the promotion would create distance between us. I turned it down because I thought our relationship mattered more than my career. Now I understood. He needed me home those evenings because he was with Jasmine. He used our relationship as leverage to control my schedule, to keep me available when it suited his double life. Jasmine and I sat in silence for a moment, processing how much we both gave up for him. She pulled up photos on her phone again, pictures taken inside Arlo's apartment. I did the same with mine. We compared them side by side. In Jasmine's photos, the camera angles were tight, mostly close-ups of her and Arlo with blank walls in the background. No wide shots showing the full room. In my photos, the same pattern appeared. Careful framing that avoided showing identifying details. I had hardly any pictures that captured the whole living room or bedroom. Jasmine said she always thought it was weird that Arlo didn't like taking photos at his place. He claimed the lighting was bad, or the apartment was messy. Now she realized he was hiding evidence. If either of us had clear photos of his space, we might have eventually compared notes and noticed we were both in the same apartment. I looked at the few wide-angle shots I did have. I noticed now that certain items were missing from different photos. A blue throw blanket appeared in some pictures, but not others. A specific coffee mug sat on the counter in one shot, but was gone in the next. He must have hidden my belongings when Jasmine visited, and hidden her things when I was there. Jasmine mentioned she never stayed over on weekends. Arlo told her he needed weekends to decompress, to have alone time. He said it was important for his mental health to have space. I realized I was always at the apartment on weekends. That was our time together. He had me on weekends and her on weeknights. A perfect split schedule that kept us from ever crossing paths. Jasmine's voice cracked as she talked about Arlo's friend Julian from work. Julian knew about both of us. She'd seen Julian at a company picnic last summer. When Arlo introduced them, Julian gave Arlo a strange look. Later, she saw Julian pull Arlo aside, and they had an intense conversation. She'd asked Arlo about it, and he said Julian was just being weird about work drama. Now she understood. Julian was probably warning Arlo that his double life was risky. I remembered meeting Julian once when he stopped by the apartment. He seemed uncomfortable the whole time. He kept looking between me and Arlo like he wanted to say something, but didn't. He left quickly, and Arlo seemed irritated after he was gone. Julian had been helping Arlo maintain this deception, running interference at work events, making excuses when needed, covering for him when the schedules got complicated. He knew what Arlo was doing, and he went along with it. Jasmine and I looked at each other across the table, covered in the damning evidence of our duplicate lives. Something strange was happening between us. We should hate each other. We were, technically, rivals for the same man's attention. But instead, I felt this odd, powerful connection forming. We were both victims of the same manipulation. We both trusted someone who systematically lied to us for years. We both changed ourselves to fit his preferences. We both gave up opportunities because he convinced us our relationship with him mattered most. Neither of us saw the signs because he was so careful, so deliberate in his deception. Jasmine asked what we should do now. We need to confront him, I said. Together. She nodded, a fierce spark in her eyes. She suggested we go to his apartment when he wasn't expecting either of us. I still had my key. We could show up at a time when he told both of us he would be busy. Force him to face both of us at once. Explain himself with nowhere to hide. Jasmine checked her phone. Arlo told me he has to work late this Wednesday. I checked my messages. He told me he had a client dinner Wednesday evening. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Wednesday it is. 2 days from now. We both show up at his door and watch his carefully constructed lies fall apart. Wednesday came. We stood outside Arlo's apartment door at 7 in the evening. Jasmine held her key in one hand, and I held mine in the other. Neither of us had told him we were coming. He thought I was at a work dinner, and he told Jasmine he had to stay late at the office. We looked at each other for a long moment, a silent pact, before I nodded and she unlocked the door. The apartment was quiet when we walked in. Lights were on in the living room and kitchen. Arlo's jacket hung on the hook by the door. We heard water running in the bathroom. Then it stopped. Footsteps moved down the hallway. Arlo walked into the living room, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair wet from the shower. He froze. When he saw both of us standing there, his face went completely white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jasmine crossed her arms. I did the same. He looked between us, like he was frantically searching for words that would fix this, but there weren't any. He started to say something about this being a misunderstanding, but I cut him off. We know everything, I stated, my voice steady, betraying none of the chaos churning inside me. Jasmine added, we've compared notes and timelines and photos. We know about the separate schedules and the hidden belongings and the lies about work events. Arlo sat down hard on the couch, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. He buried his head in his hands. Jasmine walked closer and started listing things. She talked about the summer picnic where she met his co-workers as his girlfriend, the weekend trips he took with me while telling her he was visiting family, the way he kept her away from his apartment on weekends. I added my own list. The company parties, he said, weren't worth my time. The promotion I turned down because he said it would interfere with our relationship. The constant, insidious pressure about my hair and appearance. Arlo looked up, tears in his eyes. He tried to interrupt, but Jasmine held up her hand. We're not done talking, she said, her voice firm. I mentioned how he isolated both of us from his work life and friend groups, how he made sure we never overlapped in any way, how he controlled what we wore and how we styled our hair so we would fit some image he had in his head. Jasmine talked about the lie he told her about me being a stalker, the way he made her think she was crazy for questioning things that didn't add up. Arlo's shoulders started shaking. He was crying now. I never meant for this to happen, he sobbed. It started as casual dating with both of you, and then it got serious with both of you, and I didn't know how to choose. He said he loved parts of both relationships and convinced himself he could keep them separate forever. His voice broke when he talked. I know it was wrong, he choked out, but by the time I realized how deep I was in the deception, it felt impossible to stop. Why did the hair matter so much? I asked him directly, my voice hollow. Why did you spend 3 years pressuring me to keep it short? Why did you do the same thing to Jasmine? Arlo wiped his face with his hands. He mumbled, I have a specific type I'm attracted to: short hair, professional appearance, a certain look. He thought we both looked more sophisticated with pixie cuts. But really, he confessed, he wanted us to look similar. So his fantasy could stay consistent. He wanted to be able to picture the same type of woman, whether he was with me or with Jasmine. Jasmine's voice was cold when she asked, "Are there other women?" Arlo shook his head, quickly. "It's just been us two." But he hesitated, just a fraction of a second. And that pause told us everything. We looked at each other, and I could see the same doubt in her eyes that I felt. We might never know the full truth. There could be others we didn't know about. More lies we hadn't uncovered yet. "We're both done with you," I told Arlo. Jasmine nodded, her eyes blazing. "The same," she said. Arlo stood up fast, reaching toward us. "I'll do anything to fix this," he cried. "I'll go to therapy. I know I have problems. I can change if you give me another chance. I'll choose one of you if that's what it takes." His desperation was repulsive. The fact that he was still trying to negotiate, to bargain, just proved we were making the right choice. I walked to the bedroom, started grabbing my things. Clothes from the closet, toiletries from the bathroom, books from the nightstand. Jasmine stayed in the living room, and I could hear Arlo's voice rising and falling as he tried to talk to her. I stuffed everything into the bags I'd brought. My hands shook as I packed, but I kept moving, a strange, grim determination filling me. Every item I took felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I found photos of us together, happy, smiling photos, and left them on the dresser. I didn't want any reminders. When I came back to the living room with my bags, Jasmine was standing by the door. Arlo was still on the couch, face in his hands. I walked to the kitchen counter and set down my apartment key. The metal made a small sound when it hit the granite. Something about that tiny noise felt utterly, irrevocably final. I felt relief, mixed with a heavy sadness. 3 years of my life, built on lies. But at least now I knew the truth. Jasmine and I walked out together, without saying anything else to Arlo. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone. We exchanged numbers. "We should stay in touch," she said. We weren't friends, exactly not yet. But we understood each other in a way nobody else could. We both gave up parts of ourselves for someone who was using us. We both trusted someone who systematically lied every single day. She gave me a quick hug before we went to our separate cars. I drove to Rosemary's apartment. I couldn't go back to the place I shared with Arlo. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Rosemary opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. She didn't ask questions. She just made tea and sat with me while I cried. Over the next few days, I stayed on her couch, trying to figure out what came next. Arlo kept texting long messages about how sorry he was, how he wanted to explain. Voice messages where he sounded like he'd been crying. I read the first few, then I stopped. My sister, Gabriella, came over one evening and looked at my phone. "You need to block his number," she said firmly. "Every time you read his messages or listen to his voice, you're giving him power over you." She was right. So I blocked him. The silence after that felt strange, but also incredibly freeing. Gabriella offered to help me look for a new apartment. "You can't stay with Rosemary forever," she'd said, even though Rosemary keeps saying you can stay as long as you need. We spent the weekend looking at listings online and visiting places. Gabriella made jokes about Arlo's weird hair thing to try to make me laugh. "Maybe you should date a bald guy next time, just to be safe," she'd quip. I did laugh, even though it still hurt. We looked at studios and one-bedrooms across town, places that Arlo had never been to and would never know about. I needed a space that was completely mine, somewhere he couldn't picture me or show up unexpectedly. The apartments were more expensive than splitting rent with him had been, but I didn't care. I found a small studio in a building with good security. It had big windows, and the landlord seemed nice. I signed the lease 2 weeks after the confrontation at Arlo's place. The apartment was empty when I got the keys, but it felt like possibility, not loneliness. I stood in the middle of the bare floor and looked around at my new space. Nobody had controlled me here. Nobody had lied to me here. This is where I start over. A few days after moving into my new place, my phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. She said she'd reported everything to HR at Arlo's company because he used work events to carry out his lies. She said they were looking into whether he broke any rules about honesty and relationships. I stared at the message for a long time before responding that I thought she did the right thing. The idea of him facing real consequences at work made me feel something between satisfaction and exhaustion. I didn't have energy left to be angry, but I was glad someone was holding him accountable. Jasmine texted back that the HR person seemed shocked when she explained the timeline and showed photos of both of us at different company events. She said they asked a lot of questions about how long it had been going on and whether any coworkers knew. I wondered if Julian would get in trouble for helping cover everything up. My phone rang 2 days later, and it was Caitlin from Arlo's office. She said she wanted to check on me and share what was happening at the office. People were disgusted by what Arlo did. According to her, Julian was dealing with fallout too, because several coworkers realized he must have known about both relationships. The gossip was intense, but most people felt bad for Jasmine and me. Caitlin said she felt guilty for not noticing something was wrong earlier. I told her there was no way she could have known because Arlo was so careful about keeping us separate. She mentioned that some people were actively avoiding Arlo in the break room and at meetings. His reputation was damaged in ways that would probably follow him for years. I thanked her for calling and for being kind about the whole situation. After we hung up, I felt strange, knowing that strangers at his office were talking about my relationship and feeling sorry for me. I decided I needed professional help processing everything, so I searched for therapists who worked with manipulation cases. I found someone named River, who specialized in emotional abuse and control. Her office was in a quiet building downtown with plants in the waiting room. She had kind eyes and didn't push me to talk before I was ready. In our first session, I told her about the hair and the lies and how I stopped recognizing myself. River listened without interrupting and then said what Arlo did with my hair was part of a bigger pattern. She explained that he was eroding my sense of self bit by bit. He made me doubt my own judgment about something as basic as my appearance. River said this kind of manipulation works because it happens slowly over months and years, until you can't remember what you wanted before someone else started telling you what to want. Over the next few weeks in therapy, I worked through how I gradually lost trust in myself. River asked me to think about other decisions where Arlo influenced my choices. I realized he had opinions about my clothes and my friends and how I spent my free time. He always framed his preferences as helpful suggestions or concerns about what was best for me. River explained that abusers don't usually start with big, controlling moves. They start small, with things that seem reasonable, like suggesting a haircut or commenting on an outfit. Then they build on those small victories until they've reshaped major parts of your life. She said the insidious part is that you think you're making your own choices because the pressure is subtle and constant rather than forceful. By the time you realize what's happened, you barely remember who you were before. I decided to do something symbolic, truly for myself. I booked an appointment at a salon I'd never been to before. When I sat in the chair, I told the stylist, I need help figuring out what I actually want my hair to look like. I explained that for years, someone else controlled how I wore it, and now I didn't trust my own taste. The stylist was patient, showing me different options with layers and colors. We talked through what felt right to me, without anyone else's input. I decided to keep growing my hair out, but add long layers that framed my face. We chose a rich brown color with subtle highlights that caught the light. When she finished, I looked in the mirror and felt something shift inside me. This hair was mine. I chose it. Nobody pressured me or made me doubt myself. The woman, looking back at me, felt more real than she had in years. Jasmine texted, asking if I wanted to meet for coffee again. We picked a place halfway between our apartments, and when she walked in, I noticed her hair was growing out too. It was past her chin now, and she looked different from the photos I saw on her social media. We ordered drinks and sat by the window. She touched her hair, a sad smile on her face. She said she realized she associated short hair with being controlled, even though the haircut itself wasn't the problem. The manipulation was the problem. I told her I understood completely because I went through the exact same thought process. We laughed, but it wasn't really funny. It was more like we were acknowledging how messed up the whole situation was. Jasmine said her new boyfriend loved her hair at any length and never commented on it unless she asked his opinion. She seemed lighter, somehow, like she was rediscovering parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. I got a text from Caitlin with an update about Arlo's work situation. The company was making him transfer to a different department so he wouldn't have to interact with Jasmine. His reputation was still damaged, and several co-workers had distanced themselves from him. People who used to eat lunch with him now sat at different tables. Julian was dealing with social consequences too, because everyone knew he helped hide the truth. Caitlin said the workplace gossip had mostly died down, but people still brought it up sometimes. She mentioned that Jasmine seemed to be doing better and had stopped looking over her shoulder in the hallways. I was glad the company took action, even though I knew it didn't fix what happened. At least Jasmine didn't have to see him every day and pretend everything was normal. Rosemary came over to help me move furniture and set up my new apartment. We spent hours arranging the couch and hanging pictures and organizing the kitchen. She brought pizza for dinner, and we ate sitting on the floor because I didn't have a dining table yet. Rosemary looked at me, a soft smile on her face. "I'm so proud of how you're handling everything," she said. "You seem more like yourself than you have in years." I asked her what she meant, and she explained that during my relationship with Arlo, I was always second-guessing myself, always asking for other people's opinions about basic choices. She said, "Now you make decisions without needing validation from everyone around you." I hadn't realized how much I had changed until she pointed it out. We stayed up late talking and laughing, and I felt so grateful to have a friend who stuck by me through all of this. My email pinged with a long message from Arlo. He apologized for everything, said he'd started therapy to work on his issues. He wrote that he understood if I never forgave him, but wanted me to know he was trying to become a better person. He claimed he'd been diagnosed with some kind of attachment disorder, and his therapist was helping him understand why he did what he did. The email went on for paragraphs about his childhood and his fears and his regrets. I read it once all the way through, and then I deleted it without responding. I don't owe him my forgiveness or my attention. His healing journey is not my responsibility. I closed my laptop, went to make tea, and didn't think about him for the rest of the night. I started reaching out to friends I'd lost touch with during my relationship with Arlo. I texted people I used to see regularly and suggested meeting up for coffee or dinner. Most of them responded right away, saying they'd love to reconnect. Over the next few weeks, I had several conversations where friends admitted they thought something was off about Arlo, but didn't want to interfere in my relationship. One friend said he seemed controlling about small things like where we sat at restaurants or what I ordered. Another friend mentioned that I stopped suggesting plans and always checked with Arlo first before committing to anything. Hearing their observations hurt because it meant other people saw what I couldn't see, but it also validated my experience. I wasn't imagining the control. It was real enough that people on the outside noticed it, too. Gabriella showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning with coffee and a determined look on her face. She announced, "We're going shopping and you're not allowed to say no." I started to make excuses about not having money to spend on new clothes, but she waved me off. "It's my treat," she said, "and you need to stop arguing." We drove to the mall and walked into stores I usually avoided because they seemed too trendy or colorful. Gabriella pulled dresses off racks and held them up against me, ignoring my protests that they weren't my style. She said, That's exactly the point, because your style has been dictated by Arlo for 3 years, and now you get to figure out what you actually like. We tried on clothes for over an hour. I kept gravitating toward the neutral, professional pieces in blacks and grays. Gabriella physically steered me away from those sections and brought me a bright blue dress with a pattern of small flowers. I held it up and immediately thought, it's too much, too attention-grabbing, too young for me. Then I realized those were all things Arlo would have said. I tried the dress on and stared at myself in the fitting room mirror. The color made my skin look warm and healthy. The cut fit my body in a way that felt comfortable and confident. I looked like someone who enjoyed getting dressed in the morning, instead of someone performing a professional costume. Gabriella saw my face when I came out of the fitting room and didn't even ask if I was getting it. She just took it to the register and paid before I could talk myself out of it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine a few days later. She said she had news and wanted me to know she'd started seeing someone new. She met him at a friend's party, and they'd been on 3 dates so far. She wrote that he complimented her growing out hair once, and then never mentioned it again unless she specifically asked his opinion. She said it was refreshing to be with someone who didn't have an agenda about how she looked or what she wore. She mentioned that this guy asked her what she wanted to do on their dates instead of planning everything and expecting her to go along with it. I texted back that I was happy for her, and I truly meant it. We developed this strange friendship built on shared trauma, and hearing that she was moving forward made me feel hopeful about my own healing. I was at the grocery store on a Wednesday evening, picking up basics, when I turned the corner into the produce section and saw Arlo. He was examining apples near the organic display. My chest tightened immediately, and I froze in place, my hand still on the cart handle. He hadn't seen me yet. I should just continue shopping like a normal person, but my brain screamed at me to leave right now. I abandoned my cart in the middle of the aisle and walked quickly toward the exit, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I made it to my car and sat there shaking for 10 minutes before I could even put the key in the ignition. I called River from the parking lot, and she talked me through breathing exercises until I calmed down enough to drive home. At our next session, River helped me understand that panic responses are normal after what I experienced. We worked on strategies for handling unexpected encounters, including planning what I might say if I have to interact with Arlo and practicing staying in public spaces instead of fleeing. She reminded me that my anxiety doesn't mean I'm not healing. It just means my nervous system is still processing the betrayal. I was folding laundry in my apartment one evening when I realized something profound. I hadn't looked at Arlo's social media in over a week. I used to check it multiple times a day, searching for clues about what he was doing or whether he was seeing someone new. I'd read through old posts, trying to find hidden meanings or signs I should have noticed. But lately, I'd been too busy with work and therapy and reconnecting with friends to obsess over his life. The need to understand exactly why he did what he did was fading. I was starting to accept that I might never have a satisfying explanation for his choices. And that's okay, because his behavior was about his own issues, not about anything lacking in me. I was finally focusing on my own growth instead of trying to decode his psychology. It felt like progress. My supervisor called me into her office on a Friday afternoon, and I spent the walk down the hallway worried that I'd done something wrong. Instead, she offered me a promotion to senior account manager. The position required occasional evening networking events and client dinners. A year ago, I would have turned it down immediately because Arlo always made me feel guilty about evening commitments. I would have convinced myself I didn't deserve the promotion or that the extra responsibility would be too stressful. But I accepted the offer without hesitation and thanked her for the opportunity. She smiled and mentioned that I seemed more confident and engaged at work lately. She said I'd been contributing more in meetings and taking initiative on projects. I realized she was right. I wasn't second-guessing every decision or waiting for someone else to validate my ideas anymore. Jasmine and I met for lunch at a cafe downtown to catch up on our healing progress. We sat outside in the spring sunshine and compared notes on therapy and dating and learning to trust ourselves again. She admitted she still had hard days where she questioned her judgment about everything. I told her I did too, especially when I was tired or stressed. We talked about red flags we were learning to recognize in potential relationships. People who push boundaries after we say no, or who have explanations that don't quite add up, or who seem too interested in changing how we look or act. Jasmine said she was getting better at walking away from situations that felt off, instead of talking herself into giving people more chances. I agreed that was something I was working on too. We finished lunch and hugged goodbye, both of us acknowledging how strange it was that we'd become friends through such awful circumstances, but also how grateful we were to have someone who truly understood what we went through. River and I spent a session talking about how my hair growing out became symbolic of reclaiming my autonomy. She pointed out that while the physical change was important, the real work was rebuilding my sense of self beyond appearance. I was learning to trust my preferences and judgment in all areas of my life, not just how I look. We discussed how I was making decisions about my career, my friendships, my living space, and my daily routines based on what I actually wanted, instead of what someone else thought I should want. River asked me to notice moments when I chose something for myself without seeking validation from others. I realized I'd been doing that more often lately, like accepting the promotion or buying the blue dress, or deciding to keep growing my hair without asking anyone's opinion first. I went on a few casual dates over the next month, using them as practice for setting boundaries and being honest about what I wanted. The first date, I was so nervous I barely spoke, but I managed to say no when he suggested going to a second location after dinner. The second date, I was more comfortable, and I told him directly that I wasn't interested in a relationship right now, just casual company. He respected that, and we had a nice evening. The third date, I realized halfway through that I wasn't attracted to this person, and I ended the date early instead of forcing myself to sit through dessert out of politeness. Each time I advocated for myself, it got a little easier. I was learning that being direct about my needs didn't make me difficult or demanding. It made me honest. Gabriella came over for dinner at my apartment and watched me cook while we talked about work and family and my dating experiments. She said I seemed lighter and more present than I had in years. I asked what she meant, and she explained that during my relationship with Arlo, I was always second-guessing myself about everything. She said I would ask everyone's opinion before making even small decisions, like what to order at restaurants or whether to cut my hair or what color to paint my bedroom. She mentioned that I constantly sought validation and seemed anxious about making the wrong choice. But now, she said, her eyes shining, you make decisions with confidence and don't need everyone to agree with you before you move forward. I hadn't realized how much I had changed until she pointed it out. We ate dinner and laughed about old memories, and I felt grateful to have a sister who stuck by me through all of this and who sees my growth even when I don't notice it myself. I was at a coffee shop near my apartment ordering an iced latte when Julian walked in and spotted me at the counter. He approached me carefully and said he'd been hoping to run into me because he wanted to apologize for his role in Arlo's deception. He explained that he knew about both relationships and helped cover for Arlo at work events by running interference and making excuses. He said he felt terrible about it and had been dealing with the social consequences at their company. I listened to his whole apology and then told him, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm not interested in maintaining any connection to that situation. I explained that I was focused on moving forward, and that included not having relationships with people who were part of the deception, even if they regretted it now. Julian looked disappointed, but nodded and said he understood. I took my coffee and walked out of the shop, feeling strong and clear about my boundaries. I didn't owe him forgiveness or friendship just because he apologized. I got to decide who stayed in my life. A few weeks passed, and I noticed my hair brushing against my shoulders when I turned my head. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror one morning and pulled the strands forward to check the length. It reached past my shoulders for the first time since before I met Arlo. I ran my fingers through it and smiled at my reflection. The hair itself looked good, but that wasn't what made me feel proud. I chose this length myself, without asking anyone's opinion or seeking validation. I didn't cut it to please someone else or let it grow because someone told me to. This decision came from me alone, and that felt more important than any hairstyle ever could. I took a photo and texted to Rosemary with a simple caption about reaching my goal length. She responded immediately with celebration emojis and said I looked beautiful. I believed her, but more than that, I believed myself when I looked in the mirror now. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine a few days later. She sent a photo of herself at what looked like a company event, based on the background decorations and professional attire. Her hair had grown out past her shoulders, too, and she was smiling next to a man with his arm around her waist. The caption said she wanted to share some good news about her new relationship. I zoomed in on her face and noticed the genuine happiness in her expression. She looked relaxed and comfortable in a way I never saw in any of the photos from her time with Arlo. I text back congratulations and mean it. The fact that I feel happy for her surprises me, given how we met and the strange circumstances that brought us together. But we both survived the same manipulation, and seeing her move forward with someone who treats her well makes me hopeful for my own future. We're not close friends, and probably never will be, but there's a connection between us that feels important, even if we only check in occasionally. I was organizing my closet the following weekend when I realized something had shifted in how I thought about what happened with Arlo. I pulled out a dress I bought during our relationship because he said the color looked sophisticated on me. I remembered second-guessing my own taste and deferring to his opinion about almost everything. But now, when I looked at the dress, I just saw a piece of clothing that didn't fit my style anymore. The betrayal and manipulation are part of my history, and they taught me to recognize red flags and trust my own judgment. Those lessons matter and shaped who I am now. But the actual events don't dominate my thoughts the way they did in those first awful months. I don't replay conversations in my head or wonder what I could have done differently. The whole experience exists as something that happened to me, rather than something that defines me. I donated the dress, along with several other items that didn't feel like me anymore. The closet looked sparse when I finished, but everything left represented choices I made for myself. My next therapy session with River felt different from the beginning. We sat in her office, and she asked about my progress over the past few months. I told her about the coffee shop encounter with Julian and how I set clear boundaries without feeling guilty. I mentioned the casual dates where I practiced being direct about my needs and preferences. I described the growing confidence I felt when making decisions without seeking validation from others. River listened carefully and then suggested we might be ready to transition from weekly sessions to monthly check-ins. She explained that I'd made remarkable progress in rebuilding my sense of self and learning to recognize manipulation tactics before they take hold. The goal of therapy was never to erase what happened, but to help me process it and develop tools for healthier relationships moving forward. She believed I had those tools now and could continue growing without needing weekly support. The idea of ending regular sessions made me nervous for about 10 seconds before I realized the nervousness came from habit rather than actual need. I agreed to the new schedule, and we planned our next monthly appointment. Walking out of her office that day felt like graduating from something difficult but necessary. 6 months had passed since the holiday party revelation when I decided to host a dinner party at my apartment. I invited Rosemary, Gabriella, and a few other close friends I'd reconnected with over the past half year. I spent the afternoon cooking and setting up my small dining area. The apartment still felt new to me in some ways, but it was completely mine and that mattered. My guests arrived with wine and desserts, and we crowded around my table talking and laughing. Rosemary told embarrassing stories from our college days. Gabriella shared updates about her kids and her new job promotion. Another friend talked about her dating disasters, and we all offered advice and support. The conversation flowed easily without any awkward silences or forced topics. We stayed at the table long after we finished eating, refilling wine glasses and picking at leftover appetizers. Someone suggested we play a card game, and we cleared the dishes to make room. The evening stretched late into the night, and I looked around at these people who stuck by me through everything. I felt genuinely content in a way I couldn't have imagined during those first awful weeks after the truth came out. This apartment, these friendships, this version of myself, all felt solid and real. Nobody mentioned Arlo once during the entire evening, and I didn't think about him either until later when everyone had left and I was cleaning up. Even then, the thought passed quickly without leaving any weight behind it. I was getting ready for a work event the next week when I caught my reflection in my bedroom mirror. I'd been styling my long hair with a curling iron, and it fell past my shoulders in loose waves. I paused, the iron still in my hand, and really looked at the woman staring back at me. She looked confident, her shoulders back and her head held high. She looked authentic in clothes she chose because she likes them, not because someone told her they were sophisticated. She looked free from the constant need to adjust herself to fit someone else's preferences. For the first time in years, I recognized her as completely myself, without any layers of performance or people-pleasing. The recognition made me smile, and I finished styling my hair with steady hands. I grabbed my bag and headed out to the event, feeling ready for whatever comes next. The future feels open, and full of possibilities I get to choose for myself. This entire experience taught me so much about listening to my gut, about trusting my own judgment, and about what true confidence really means. It was painful, yes, but it also made me stronger. Have you ever had a moment like this, where something completely unexpected unraveled a whole truth you never saw coming? Or has someone tried to subtly change who you are? I'd really love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.